When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. That's a part of the second verse of the 61st Psalm. I'd like to read it again. This is a very precious passage of Scripture to me. When I was a country boy down in southeast Alabama, just 15 years old, preaching out there in the woods on the brush arbors and country schoolhouses, I used to preach a sermon from this text. I don't suppose it was much of a sermon, but it must have got hold of my heart at that time as a boy. I don't even remember the outlines. I don't know what I said about it. But all I know is I had a sermon on this text, and people used to comment on it. So they must have had a little heart pull in it anyway. But you don't have to have much heart pull in the message on this verse, the second verse here of the 61st Psalm. The heart pulls in the verse. Who hasn't cried out with his heart overwhelmed sometime for help? Something from above, something that you can't get hold of. It's got to come down and take hold of you. Now he said, when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that's higher than I. In other words, give me a protection that I haven't in my own strength or help. A protection that I cannot find, something above me. Something that's I've got to reach up to get and must reach down to get hold of me. I need it. Why, you know you need it. There isn't a person listening to me now that hasn't felt it sometime in his life. A longing for help that no human hand could give. Something that is out in space, something that's away from you, but something that you need so much. You're overwhelmed, some of you, by temptations of life. There's no sin in being tempted. Everybody's tempted sometime. There's no temptation taken you, but such is common to man. But God is faithful, will not suffer you to be tempted above that you're able, but with the temptation provides a way of escape. So when you're tempted, that's no time to run away from God. That's the time to get near God. Temptations. I'm talking to somebody now that may be going through a trial in your life. Maybe you reached a crisis. Maybe it's a time of great strain, great temptation, desperation. A man said to me one time, you know, I was tempted to end my own life. Of course, he was crazy. No sane man ever kills himself. No sane man ever commits suicide. Of course, this man was a sinner. He had been driven by his sin into a state of insanity. Sometimes sin does drive people crazy. But this man had put himself in a predicament by his wrongdoing. And oh, how many desperate things you read about. You read in the paper there, too, that horrible tragedy in a nearby state where that woman, the mother of a son, and that man prominent in business, father of a son or a child, and how that terrible scandal and disgrace, that awful sorrow, you probably read in the paper. If you didn't read that one, you read another one, because they're always being read, they're always being released in this country. Stories of tragedies and disgrace and shame, how terrible things are. So this man was in a predicament, and he was put in this predicament by the sins he'd committed and the way he lived. So he said, I was ready to commit suicide, getting ready to end it all. And he said, just at the time I was ready to end it all, he said, I looked up to God. And God brought me out of my trouble, delivered me from it. When my heart's overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that's higher than I. I remember one time one of the great preachers of this country is dead now. He was in a great university studying as a young man. And he was an atheist or an agnostic. Quite a scholarly man he wasn't, quite a thinker. But he was just a sinner. And he claimed to be an atheist and an agnostic. And he started to commit suicide. He told me about it. He said, I was going to end my life. If I call that man's name, you'd know him. He's dead and gone. His name's well known in this country. He said, I was going to end my life. But I cried out to God there in the dormitory one night. And God saved me. Men and women, this thing's real I'm talking to you about. We're not guessing at this. Some of you today are in slavery. You've tried to deliver yourself from your temptations and pull out from the chains of sin that bind you. And you haven't been able to free yourself. You've said, I'm not going to do this anymore, but you did it again and again and kept on doing it. And swearing off and kept falling. You know what you need? You need help. And I know somebody can help you. And it's higher than man. It's higher than you are. It's the help that comes from God. When my heart's overwhelmed. When I can't get a way out. When the storms are beating upon me. when the time of tragedy and trouble comes, and I know not which way to turn, and I do not know how to escape. Lead me to the rock that's higher than I. Give me deliverance. Give me help that comes from above. Help that's above me, higher than I am. Help that's stronger than my willpower. Help that's stronger than my strength. Help that's even beyond the grasp of my imagination. Give me help. Men and women, you can have it if you want it. You don't have to be enslaved. You don't have to be downtrodden by your difficulties and oppressed by your burdens. Jesus Christ moves down the corridor of time and says, cast your burden on the Lord. You are overwhelmed with a burden. You can't carry it. It's crushing you. I'm talking to somebody now, maybe a woman. You have a skipping pulse, and maybe your head's getting a little gray too soon. And your heart's all torn to pieces. And everything's in the world's wrong with you. And you're just in despair. And maybe you haven't had a square deal. Maybe you have, and maybe you haven't given somebody else a square deal. And there you are. And you want to know what to do, don't you? You need help. And there is help. My help cometh from God. You know, I quote to you so many times that verse in the Psalms. I look unto the hills whence cometh my help. My help cometh from God. All the help along the way of life that any man ever gets comes from God. Every lift that's a normal lift is a lift from God. The help from above is from God. All your help. Oh, men and women, you can get the help you need. You don't have to be downtrodden and crushed and defeated. You can have help. Now the psalmist cries out. The storms are overwhelming you. It's hard to overwhelm. You know, we read the other day in the paper, a day or two ago, where somebody went down at sea. There's a wreck. I think a prominent woman, a rich man's wife. They found, I think, her body. Overwhelmed by the waves of the sea going down. But I'm talking to somebody today that has a storm in your heart that would sink the ships at sea. Storms that are raging in your soul. And you don't know just what to do, and you're all oppressed and downcast. Well, you don't have to go on like that. There's somebody that can calm the troubled waves. That somebody is alive forevermore. His name is Jesus. You know, one time he was out on a stormy sea, and the vessel was being rocked, and he was asleep back there in the boat, just taking a little rest. And all of them were rowing and raving, fussing. And I can imagine somebody saying, look at him, sleeping. Sleeping. Here we are, rowing the boat. It's all right for him to stay back there and sleep and let us row. I imagine probably some of them said that, because that's just like human nature. Look at him. Looks like he'd be helping us. Listen, he always helps when the time comes, if you want him. And the sea kept raging, the storm blew, and after a while he got up, you know, stood there on the little boat and looked at the waves and said, now everybody get quiet. Waves, be still. And wind, you stop blowing. And the waves went to sleep on the bosom of the sea like babies sleep in a mother's arms. And the wind stopped blowing. And they said, he's different from us. We couldn't do that. What manner of man is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? We couldn't do that. What sort of man is he? Hey, I'll tell you what sort of man he is. He's the one that helps us when we need help. That's the kind of man he is. That's Jesus. He gives you help when you need help. He can calm the troubled seas. He can make the wind cease blowing. He can make somebody out of a nobody. He can make something out of nothing. He can make the sky bright on a dark night. He can light up the dark valley of the shadow of death through which a saint passes. He can get between you and the storm. He can help you in the hour of temptation. Say, why don't you look up to him? You've tried, haven't you, yourself? You've done all you could do, and you didn't do anything, did you? You failed, didn't you? You tried in your own strength and made a mess of everything, didn't you? You struggled along and stumbled and fell, and now here you are, and the storms are coming. They're raging. It's a bad storm, too, and it's getting worse. And it'll get worse and worse as long as you try to help yourself and never look to Him. But why don't you say, now here I am. I surrender. I admit I can't do it. I'm not big enough. I'm not strong enough. I need something that's higher than I. Something that's above me, but something that can reach down and help me. And you can have the help you need. Some of you are haunted by memories of sins that you've committed. You've done wrong and need forgiveness. And the storms of conscience beat on you, and the memories of the past come upon you. And you're sorry and sad. Well, just tell Him to blot them out, and He'll remember them against you no more forever. And some of you are overwhelmed with your own weakness, your own helplessness. Look up to Him when my heart's overwhelmed. When I'm all crushed on the load. When the storms are beating and mother can't help me and father can't help me and sisters and brothers can't help me and folks may give me advice like Bob Jones now talking over the radio to me. But all Bob Jones can do is to advise me about where I can get help. We can't help you. Your pastor can't do it, but he can tell you about somebody that can. And that's what the psalmist is talking here today. He's talking about his help. And his help's our help. And the cry of his heart's the cry of some heart listening now. So look up today. Say, it's clear overhead. It's always clear up overhead, right up over your head, up towards the throne of God. There's always a little hole of light up there. Look up through it. When my heart's overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that's higher than I.